We are now officially live.
Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome on Discord, welcome on YouTube to our weekly online Dhamma group with Venerable Dhamma, who is joining us from the meditation center in Sri Lanka. So if you're interested in doing a meditation course, even online, then please reach out. You will find more information on the website, and everything is free of charge. And we will continue today with our study of the Dhammacakkappavattana commentary by the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw for 1 hour. And after 1 hour, there will be time for discussion and a Q&A. So if you have questions related to practice and Buddhism, you can already think about it while we read. Before we start, we will, as always, take together the 5 precepts and the refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, which is a tradition that goes back all the way back to the time of the Buddha. And we also keep that tradition to remind ourselves of the basic morality, to practice mindfulness, meditation, and become better human beings. Would anyone in the Discord group like to lead the recitation today?
I would like to.
Okay, thank you, Sanda. I will. Okay.
Ahang bante tisaranena sa pancha silani yachami. Dutiyampi ahang bante tisaranena saha pancha silani yachami. Tatiyampi ahang bante tisaranena saha pancha silani yachami.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tisaranagamana ditthitang.
Ama bante.
Pāṇātiپātā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Pāṇātiپātā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Adinādānā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Adinādānā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Kāmesu miccācārā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Kāmesu miccācārā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Musāvādā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Musāvādā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Surāmeraya majjapamādāṭṭhānā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Surāmeraya majjapamādāṭṭhānā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Imāni panca sikkhapadāni sīlena sugating yanti sīlena bhoga sampada.
I think Bante cut off at the end.
I think so.
Sorry, hello?
Hello, Bante.
Did we get all 5 precepts?
Yes, only the last one, Imani Pancha, was cutting off.
Well, you can do it again. Imāni panca sikkhapadāni sīlena sugating yanti sīlena bhoga sampada sīlena nibbutaṃ yanti tasmā sīlaṃ visodhati.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Hey, let me change my screens and we will slowly get into our reading for today. So, before we start with the reading, please send us a request if you have done at least the at-home course. Then you will also be able to speak on stage and read the text with us. We read together, each of us reads 2 paragraphs, and we take our time while reading. So we read slowly and carefully, and also take a pause in between each paragraph. So there's time for thinking about the paragraph and explanations or questions. And we continue, as you can see on screen, on page 157 of the book, 167 on the PDF. And Martin kindly posted the reading list. Last reader was Mila, so today we would start with Sanda. Please.
Meditation on the Four Truths. Meditation on the Four Truths was taught prefaced by the words understanding of the Four Truths. Of these Four Truths, the first 2, namely the truth of suffering and the truth of the origin of suffering, are concerned with the cycle of existence, vata. The last 2, namely the truth of cessation of suffering and the truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering, are concerned with escape from the cycle of existence, vivata. The meditator employs only the first two truths as objects of meditation and not the last two truths.
So you can, it should be fairly clear, but if you never thought of it, you can notice that the Four Noble Truths are separated, as he says, into two groups. The first two are suffering and its cause. The second two are the cessation of suffering and its cause. So it's cause and cause and effect, forward and backwards. What leads to the suffering, what leads to the cessation of suffering. So you can separate them like this. The word vatta is an important Buddhist word that is not really well known, I think, outside of Buddhist societies. So but for our audience, it may not be very well known. If you remember the title of this sutta, if somehow you made the connection, you can see that it's actually in this title of the sutta, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and it's the same, what do you call, the same piece of speech. Not exactly a word, but pavatta is a word, so it is the same word. It's just a compound, and in Dhammacakkappavattana, it's pavatta, or pavattana, which is the nominal form of it. I don't know what you call that. It's the, I don't remember what the term is. The vattana. Vattana means the going, the going, or the continuing. Pavattana can mean turning. It can mean just goes on or continues. Setting in motion is often, right? So we often call it the turning of the wheel, but pavattana really just means causing to start going. Or no, to not causing, but the going, setting in motion, I guess. So yeah, the vatta is often described as the cycle, but vatta just means the going on, the continuation. And it's another term for samsara. Why I point this out is because it is an important word, because it's kind of synonymous with samsara. In the West, we're much more familiar with samsara, but the vatta. So in Thai, they say sangsara vat, which is Thai for sangsara vatta. You'll often hear them say sangsara vat, sangsara vat. It's a common thing for Buddhist teachers and Buddhists in general to say, oh, sangsara vat, the rounds of samsara, the continuation of samsara. The prefix vi means out or end, I guess you could say. Well, kind of out is pretty accurate. So vivatta means the stopping of the cycle or the going out from the cycle. Escape, as he says here. So it's the opposite. Vatta and vivatta. What we aim in Buddhism is for vivatta. Now, most Buddhists don't ardently aim to end the cycle of existence. Most of them, if they thought about it, would, as I said, would probably say, oh, well, some existence isn't that bad. And most foreigners and newcomers to Buddhism can be outright horrified by the idea of giving up the vatta. So how it should be understood is we're all trying to give up some vatta. We're trying to give up the cycle, the going on of suffering. We come to Buddhism because, well, there's suffering there is this part of life that we find to be suffering. And we're looking for a vivatta, a way out of that cycle. It's often cyclical. Vatta just means going on again, but it's called a cycle because it so often is cyclical. We can't escape it. It just keeps coming back again and again. We chase after something, we get it, we're happy, we're addicted, and then it doesn't satisfy or it disappears and we suffer. And then we do it all again. We can't escape the addiction. We can't escape the habits of greed, habits of anger, habits of delusion. We're caught up in this cycle. So this is the vatta that we're trying to escape. It doesn't mean you're trying to not be born again. Ultimately, that's the conclusion that an arahant comes to. the Buddha came to, an Arahant comes to, if you go take it to its ultimate conclusion, you come to the end where you just give up everything. But for most people, they're just giving up the things that they can see for themselves are suffering. You'll never give up something if you don't see that it's useless, harmful, unbeneficial. But when you do see that it's suffering, or cause of suffering, useless, unbeneficial, you do give it up. And so there's nothing to be afraid of or worried about, or to be unsure about. Buddhism is just about giving up suffering. There's nothing hidden behind that. That's literally all it is. We're not using this as a way to get you in the door, so that we can teach you something like annihilationism or something. Where this is what we teach. It's literally there. It's on the front of the cover, and it's all that the book is. The book of Buddhism is just this. It's on the cover of the book. It's on every page of the book. It's the conclusion of the book. How to get to vivatta, how to end the suffering. Nothing else, just suffering. So vatta is a good word to remember.
And why does Mahasi say that the meditator employs only the first truth and not the last two truths? So basically, the path leading to the end of suffering would be the Eightfold Noble Path, where like there are many things that we do employ now, that those right living, speech. Yeah.
Also, as context for where we are in the text, this is just as a recap. We are on the fourth noble truth already, which is the path. And why we're talking about the Four Noble Truths is, again, because the fourth noble truth starts with right view. So the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Noble Path, has 8 parts. The first part of that path is back to the Four Noble Truths. So understand, right view is right understanding, is the view or the wisdom that understands and knows the Four Noble Truths. And so now he's talking about right view as a part of the fourth noble truth, and so he has to talk again about the Four Noble Truths as they are part of the path.
Bante, could you hear my question?
Bante, are you not able to hear Edith?
Oh, I'm sorry. Something must be wrong. I've been interrupting, I guess. No, I can't hear anybody except you. I'll come right back. Hello?
Hello? Edith, maybe now you can.
Yes.
Sorry,
But I was only speaking when we couldn't hear you at all. So there is that too.
So I was talking and nobody was listening.
No, I was able to hear you, Bante.
I was able to hear you as well. Everyone.
Oh.
Actually.
Okay, maybe I have to go back. Come back.
No, I think it's okay. It's probably on my end.
Okay, I'm not sure. Maybe you were talking about the same thing while I could not hear you. I was just asking, like, why did Mahasi say that we only employ the first two and not the second two truths? because the path leading to cessation is also something that we do engage in, right? Like right speech and right livelihood, sati and concentration.
Yeah, it's something that has to be handled delicately. You have to understand it in two different ways. So popular Buddhism, let's say pop Buddhism, like popular Buddhism that most people are aware of, is very much interested in the Eightfold Noble Path as a daily practice. If you read or listen or talk to people who have basic knowledge in Buddhism, they'll always be talking about how they're trying to incorporate the Eightfold Noble Path into their daily life. Am I saying that's wrong? No, that's of course great. It's great for them to do that, and the Buddha taught all these things. Technically, that's not the Eightfold Noble Path, as I'm sure you're aware. That is a basic part of the Pubbanga Magga. It's not even really that far on the Pubbanga Magga. It kind of is the beginning of the Pubbanga Magga. Well, let's say in general it is the Pubbanga Magga, because practicing in daily life also involves the cultivation of mindfulness and development of concentration to a certain extent. But it's not the Noble Eightfold Path. So in terms of actual practice, well, let's say there's 3 levels. So there's the level on which you, in your daily life, concern yourself with things like right speech and right action. So you say, what is right action? Well, if I'm kind to others, that's right action. If I'm generous, that's right action. If I abstain from wrong action, well, the Buddha often said that's what's right action. If you just don't kill and don't steal and so on. So me abstaining from that, well, that's right action. So I have the opportunity to kill, I don't kill. That's right action. I have the opportunity to lie, I don't lie. I speak that which is true and beneficial. People work on this. This is something that Buddhists can and should absolutely work on. But this is only the first level. It's kind of, it's ordinary morality. It's ordinary goodness. It even could be considered concentration to some extent. The second level, which again still isn't the Eightfold Noble Path, is where one actually cultivates mindfulness. The cultivation of mindfulness doesn't really involve any of this. You don't worry about lying. You don't worry about killing. You sit with your eyes closed. I mean, you do walk as well, but for the purest sort of meditation is with your eyes closed, sitting silently. There's no opportunity to kill. There's no opportunity to steal. There's no opportunity to lie or cheat or do anything bad. So the actual cultivation of the Pubbanga Magga doesn't really involve any of those things, but it satisfies them all on a level that is not really possible in ordinary daily life, because there doesn't even arise the desire to kill, the desire or the intention to kill or steal or cheat or lie or any of these things. So that is the real Pubbanga Magga. And so that's what I'm getting at, why he says you only focus on the first 2, because you don't really focus on even morality at all in the actual practice, outside of your daily activities in life. You don't worry about those things because you're just sitting watching your stomach rise and fall, or walking watching your foot move one step at a time. And so during the practice, you really don't have to concern yourself in the way you're thinking of any of the Eightfold factors, really, except for mindfulness. And to some extent, that's not even a concern. You just do the activity, and all of the Eightfold Path factors are satisfied on a preliminary level. The actual truth of the Eightfold Noble Path, you could say it's kind of like qualifications. The Buddha once said about the Eightfold Noble Path that any religious tradition or spiritual tradition wherein one can find the Eightfold Noble Path is a tradition where one could find enlightened beings. So he in a way used the 8 factors as factors for qualifying something as proper spiritual practice if they involve the Eightfold Noble Path, each of the 8 factors. So it's not that at the moment of enlightenment you're at all concerned about right speech or right action. It's that that moment qualifies in all 8 ways as being perfect. That there's no possibility for wrong view, wrong thought, wrong action, wrong speech, and so on. And so it's considered the pinnacle because of qualifying for those 8 factors. So even the actual Eightfold Noble Path, which is the third way of looking at this, and that's the moment where your practice leads you to see clearly the first noble truth, let go of the second noble truth, realize the third noble truth, and by following the fourth noble truth. At that moment, you're also not concerned with all of the 8 path factors. It's just that that is the only moment that really qualifies as truly exhibiting on a perfect level all 8 of the path factors. So that's why it's called the Eightfold Noble Path, because it qualifies on those 8. So if you look at the wording of the Eightfold Noble Path, it leaves open for all 3 of these interpretations, where you actually, the first, where you actually try to apply them in daily life. The second, where you're developing them or perfecting them by protecting your mind through the meditation practice. In other words, you're not worrying about each of the 8 path factors at all, any of them, even mindfulness. You're not really concerned with it or thinking, how can I be more mindful? You're just applying the practice. Mindfulness arises along with the other 7 path factors. They arise by themselves. And the third way, at that last moment, where you can said to have qualify in all 8 of those ways. That mental mind moment qualifies in all 8 ways. And he called this bhavana. All 3 of these are 3 forms of bhavana. So when he talks about the fourth noble truth, he doesn't yet. So we haven't gotten into the kicca yet, right? We're still just talking about what are the 4 noble truths. But after this fourth truth, he's going to then say about each of these 4 path factors, there is a duty or a task, a chore, something to be done. And for the fourth noble truth, bhavitava, it is to be cultivated. Bhavana, cultivation. And so what you say is true. You are cultivating the Eightfold Noble Path. However, the only time that you would ever be thinking about the Eightfold Noble Path would be in the non-meditative, ordinary way in your daily life, which isn't actually the path either in the Pubbanga sense or in the noble sense. In the Pubbanga sense, you're not focused on the Eightfold Noble Path at all. You're just developing it by focusing on the first noble truth mainly.
Yes, I got it when you said the Pubbanga Magga. Yes, thank you.
And the Pubbanga, it is a mistake that some meditators make, where they try to work on each of the 8 path factors individually, which is a mistake. It's absolutely a mistake, and it can be problematic. And that's what he's going to say here. The third noble truth is the same. Some meditators in Buddhist cultures will focus on the third noble truth, Nibbana. They'll try to take Nibbana as an object. It actually is an object of contemplation in the Visuddhimagga. He's going to mention this as well, that it's only really suitable for anagami, only really suitable for Arya Puggala, Sotapanna, and who have actually experienced it before they can contemplate and reflect on Nibbana as a means of quieting the mind. But the Visuddhimagga says it's only really suitable for Sotapanna and up.
It means that the meditator contemplates the first two mundane truths, not the last two supramundane truths, which are unsuitable subjects for meditation. Indeed, it is impossible to meditate on them. Why so? The sub-commentary states that these supramundane truths are beyond the understanding of ordinary common worldlings.
Yeah, it's a way of saying that this is the goal, and be putting the cart before the horse, to contemplate them as the object, which throws people off, because the fourth noble truth, as you say, doesn't sound like a goal at all. It sounds like the practice, and again, practically speaking, it kind of is. However, when you get down to real practice, you're again not contemplating the Eightfold Noble Path. But you are developing it. You're developing all 8 path factors. But I guess the simplest way to answer is, how do you develop the Eightfold Noble Path factors? It's not by reflecting on them. And that's really all he's saying. How do you develop the 8 path factors? By focusing on the first noble truth, really, just the first noble truth. The second one, you don't even really focus on it either. The second noble truth is sort of what happens, or the task happens when you focus on the first noble truth. When you see suffering, you give up the cause of suffering. That's the beauty of it. When people ask, how do you free yourself from suffering? Isn't this the question that everyone in the world asks, or should ask? How do you free yourself from suffering? It really is the universal question, which is, Buddhism is the universal religion. You shouldn't be afraid to say that. Buddhism is it. It really is asking the important question, the one important question. How do you free yourself from suffering? The beauty of it is, when you see it as suffering, that's enough. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to change it. You just have to see it. The problem is, there's no means of seeing it that's ever been proposed like the Buddha proposed it. And so it doesn't seem feasible to see that it's suffering. Most people would say, I know it's suffering. What are you talking about? If you knew it was suffering, you wouldn't suffer from it.
Indeed, it is true that ordinary common worldlings cannot take the path and fruition as their objects of meditation, nor is Nibbana within the scope of their knowledge before they attain the stage of maturity knowledge. Gotrabu Jnana. Maturity knowledge consciousness arises only after knowledge of adaptation, Anuloma Jnana, when insight becomes fully developed. Immediately after maturity, knowledge becomes the realization of the path and its fruition. Therefore, it is obvious that a common worldling is not in a position to take Nibbana or the path and its fruition as an object of meditation. Thus, it must be carefully noted that any instruction to begin with meditation on Nibbana is totally wrong.
So he's put them in the reverse order. Gotrabhu Jnana comes after Anuloma Jnana. And if you want to understand these, Anuloma Jnana is worth understanding. I've talked about this before. Some of you may have heard me talk about it, or some of you may know of the word from other places. But Anuloma, Loma is a word that means grain. So like wood has a grain. know this word, not grain as rice, but grain like in wood. If you look at wood, if you've ever split wood, when they cut the wood with a chainsaw, then you're left with these pieces of log, and then you have to split those. To split the wood, of course, you have to go with the grain, and if you go with the grain of the wood, the block easily is or relatively easily is split in half. When I was a kid, we had to chop wood like this. So anuloma means to go with the grain. This is actually a common expression for those of you who are native English speakers, with the grain. So knowledge that goes with the grain. They translate here as conformity, adaptation. Conformity is another common translation. But it means to completely be in line with the truth. That's the meaning. Or in line with the Eightfold Noble Path, if you want to understand it. So anuloma is where you get it. And that is the point, that is the consummation of the cultivation of vipassana, the cultivation of satipatthana. It is the culmination of the vipassana jnanas. Anuloma jnana is that one moment where you finally get it. So at that point, you've seen the three characteristics again and again. You get to the point where you see one final time, impermanence or suffering or non-self. Just a simple thing. As you're watching the stomach rise and fall, you see it as impermanent, you see it, and it's not intellectual. The problem with saying this, of course, is people are going to go back and try to see these things, and that's very much to be discouraged. That's not the point here. But as you pay attention with mindfulness, forget about vipassana, forget about the three characteristics, focus on mindfulness, be mindful. You'll start to see the three characteristics, and eventually you'll see them so clearly. Not intellectualizing, not thinking, is that the three characteristics? You'll just see them. And you'll see them so clearly that the mind finally gets it. It gets to the point where it's completely in line with the truth. This is not worth clinging to. Nothing is worth clinging to. And that's the trigger or the process that comes after. Gotrabu. Gotrabu is this, like the switch. It's often described as a person walking through a door. Gotrabu is the change. So you walk from one room to the other room. There's a point where you're in the door. You're not in one room or the other room. That point is called change of lineage, gotra. Not really change, but becoming gotra. Gotra actually means family or clan. Becoming a part of the enlightened clan. So before that, you were part of the unenlightened clan. And after that moment, you're enlightened. But that moment is the in-between. That's called gotrabu. And then after that, there's maganyana, palanyana, which takes nibbana as an object.
The question might arise whether nibbana may not be taken as an object for tranquility meditation. Contemplation on the qualities of nibbana, such as being devoid of lust, viraga, may be adopted to gain concentration. However, this exercise is taken solely for the purpose of achieving one-pointedness of mind. It is not to immediately realize the noble path and fruition. In any case, this meditation exercise is most appropriate only for the noble ones who have already realized nibbana, and not for the ordinary common worldling. Thus, it is definitely a mistaken practice to try to achieve the path and fruition by dwelling on nibbana from the very start.
the meditator learns from his or her teacher briefly that the five aggregates are the truth of suffering, and craving is the truth of the origin of suffering. Or he may learn more comprehensively that the five aggregates consist of materiality, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, and further that the aggregate of materiality means the four primary elements and their derivatives, etc. Having learned about the first two truths briefly or comprehensively from the teacher, he or she recites them repeatedly and contemplates them. With regard to the last two truths, the meditator just hears that the truth of the cessation of suffering and the truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering are desirable and laudable. This means that it is sufficient just to hear about these two supermundane truths and incline the mind towards them.
Yeah, so all he's saying is don't practice focusing on the third and fourth noble truth. Again, you don't really. I mean, I guess I shouldn't contradict him. He's saying you focus on both of them, so that's what I should say as well. But really, the first one is the greater focus, the five aggregates. Five aggregates apart from craving. I'm wrong, because you do take suffering, take craving as an object as well. Obviously, craving is not excluded from the object. So technically, craving, even though it's one of the part of the five aggregates, so you would think it's part of the first noble truth, right? Because the five aggregates are the first noble truth. Craving is in there as well, but technically, no, it's not. Why? Because technically, it's the second noble truth. But you don't take it as an object as the second noble truth. You take it as an object as the first noble. That's probably not. I probably shouldn't say that. You take it as an object as part of the five aggregates, as something that arises and ceases. So you don't actually have to attack. This is because this is an issue, a small issue, where a meditator will try to remove the desire directly. So they'll focus specifically on desire, thinking that they can get rid of it. You should focus on desire. Anytime it arises, you should note wanting, or liking. Absolutely. It's very important. But all of the five hindrances are. Disliking as well. If you dislike something, say disliking. But the key is, even those bad things, you're not purposefully trying to make them go away. You're still just trying to see them clearly, to see that they're impermanent suffering and non-self, to see that they're not worth clinging to, also not worth getting upset about. So when you dislike something, you shouldn't dislike that. You shouldn't let it upset you. Oh, look at me disliking this, or this is so terrible. Because that reifies it, and that perpetuates it. Where he says you should recite them repeatedly and contemplate them, don't take this as meaning that sufficient practice to realize the Four Noble Truths is recitation and thinking. By recitation, that's great, and that is interesting. It's something that we don't perhaps focus enough on in our community, reminding meditators that it's useful to recite. It's useful to chant even the Four Noble Truths. It's a useful thing to chant. If you want to chant the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta every day, that would be a great practice. If anyone's looking for daily chanting, well, there's just some basic chants you can do. You can take the 5 precepts every day, but chanting the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta would be a great religious exercise. It's a little bit less useful if you don't understand Pali, but you can learn Pali as you go, or you can at least learn what the Pali words mean. That is a valuable practice. It's not enough, but it's a great sort of preliminary study. Because by study, it just means to keep those things in mind and to prepare yourself, give you the right direction in your actual practice. By contemplation, he's just grossly oversimplifying the not complicated but complex task of mindfulness. So by contemplate, he means actually practicing mindfulness and spending hours and days and weeks and years, months and years cultivating mindfulness and vipassana and seeing the Four Noble Truths clear, or seeing suffering clearly, basically.
Bande, may I please ask a question? You mentioned about the second noble truth. Could you please explain how you were trying to say something about the second noble truth? We don't necessarily have to actually focus on it when doing meditation. I was
You
a
do
little
have to
confused.
focus on it, but you focus on it as you would any of the 5 aggregates. So it's as though you're focusing on it as part of the first noble truth, because your focus is not on eradicating it. The second noble truth, the task is to abandon craving. But that's not a practice. The practice is not to abandon craving. You can't practice abandoning craving, right? You can practice seeing the first noble truth. Maybe not even technically, but more so. You can use the first noble truth as an object. Second noble truth is what happens when you see clearly the first noble truth. The abandoning of craving, the second noble truth, the task for the second noble truth, comes about as a result of contemplating the first noble truth. So you don't really contemplate the second noble truth. Not technically. Well, maybe technically you do. It's complicated, but let's say practically, or for simplicity's sake, really the first noble truth is all you need.
Thank you, Bande.
Because when you see things clearly, there's no craving for them.
Right. So I think the reason I ask this question is also because sometimes I fall into I think it's a trap. So for example, when I sit and then the first noble truth of noticing all these sufferings, and then I notice that, for example, the pain goes away. So you know that you're liking the feeling of pain's going away, and then you're feeling better. So that encourages my mind in the long run to keep doing meditation, because when I do the meditation, notice all the sufferings, and then they are back coming and going, and you kind of enjoying the feeling even though you are
Mhm.
noting it. So is that something related to second noble truth, Bandy? I'm so sorry that I'm taking a lot of the reading time to ask this personal question. Thank you.
Oh, reading will always be there. This is a Dhamma study group, a Dhamma group, so discussion should be a big part of it. Probably eventually it'd be great if it would be more of a part of it than it is now, and we're not just mindlessly reading, or we're not just slavishly reading. We should be open to discussion for sure. So yes, that is part of the second noble truth. If you like the pleasant feelings that come from meditation, it's still going to be a hindrance. It's still going to cause you suffering, because this is one of the first lessons that successful meditators learn, is as they're succeeding, it feels better, it feels calmer, and they get attached to that, and then the next thing they know, it's gone, and they're stressing and suffering and worrying and feeling devastated because trying to get that feeling back again, because that feeling is gone. And so it's a clear lesson in the Four Noble Truths. Yep, I fell for craving, which led me to suffering. You shouldn't look to motivation in meditation practice. You shouldn't try to feel like you want to meditate. You should take mindfulness as more of a default. And you shouldn't, it's a distraction to think, I'll do it when I want to do it, or I can't do it because I don't want to do it. If you don't want to do it, you should note the disliking. If you want to do it, you should note the liking. If you want to do it, you should note that wanting.
Thank you very much, Bhante. Thank you.
The best way to gain encouragement in the practice is just to see how clear it makes the mind. It's most encouraging to see how different the mind that is mindful is from the mind that is unmindful. You don't need to look to results, the pleasant feelings, the calm, the peace, benefits. Everyone's always worried about the benefits, but that's just old thinking. That's just old habits. Our habits of trying to see what are we getting out of it. It's just craving, you want something to get something, some gratification. Don't look for gratification even in meditation practice. Understand the value of the meditation from how it is when you're cultivating it. At the moment of mindfulness, the mind is in a much better state than at the moment of unmindfulness. That's all you need. Then you're absolutely inclined to do it at all times, inclined to be mindful at all times.
Well, what is the benefit of benefit is what my Sanskrit teacher once said. I think it's a good question. Regarding why you want to get something out of everything.
I don't know if that's quite fair. There is a benefit to benefit. True benefit has the benefit of freeing you from lack of benefit. Maybe that's just circular talk, but beneficial things are beneficial. It's just one of those sort of paradoxes, I guess, or the dilemmas, is that you can't focus on benefit or you won't get any benefit. It's like you can't focus on Nibbana and you won't get Nibbana. I mean, it's basically the same thing. If you focus on Nibbana, you won't ever get to Nibbana. If you focus on, in general, benefit, you won't really gain benefit.
I think I was putting it too much out of context. It was regarding worldly gains. So what is the benefit of worldly benefit? That's pretty much, I think, what Buddhism would agree with.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense. I guess that's how I first understood what you said as well. And it makes sense because the implication is that those things have an end. But true benefit doesn't have an end, is the point. True benefit is freedom. Like, what is the benefit from getting out of jail? Well, the benefit is you're no longer in jail, and that lasts. But what is the benefit of good food? A good taste, let's say, or good music, or beautiful sights. There's no benefit to those things. Money, fame, power.
The meditator, acting in the way described above, penetrates the four truths simultaneously and comprehends them, understanding the four truths simultaneously through insight. By penetrative insight, Pativeda, the meditator comprehends that suffering is to be rightly and well understood, that craving is to be abandoned or eradicated, that cessation is to be realized, and that the path is to be developed. By higher knowledge, Abhisamya, he or she fully comprehends that suffering is to be rightly and well understood, that craving is to be abandoned or eradicated, that cessation is to be realized, and that the path is to be developed.
It doesn't quite happen the way it's explained here. Obviously, there's no moments where you say, oh, yes, suffering should be rightly, and this is rightly well understood. And this is a mistake, again, that you'll see in Buddhist circles where they spend time contemplating the Four Noble Truths, thinking that this is getting them closer to Nibbana. And maybe it is in a very, very, very limited way, but it's by no means sufficient. It's in no way substantially beneficial on the path. What he's talking about here is just this moment that can be described as anuloma, which is why anuloma is such a good word. Anuloma, going with the grain, where you resonate, maybe a good way of putting it, or your mind is fully online, on board. And if you were to ask a person with that state of mind, they would tell you yes about all of these statements. They would be able to say yes, 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 to all four statements. That's correct. Because they're seeing it for themselves. So they don't say, oh yes, this is to be abandoned, this is to be developed, etc. But their mind is in line with that. That's all it means. There's no, and that's why he says it's simultaneous, because it's not even really anything happening simultaneously. If you look at the Abhidhamma of it, there's nothing happening simultaneously. It's just that that moment is in conformity with all of these statements, that a person with that state of mind would simultaneously, well, no, if they were asked any of these four questions, they would at that moment be able to say yes, yes, yes. If they were to be told these four statements about each of the Four Noble Truths, they would agree with all four of them, unconditionally, unequivocally, with no doubt, with no hesitation. So, I mean, it's accurate. It's just, don't take this to mean they actually think these things all at once, or well, whatever that would mean.
As described above, before attaining the path, the meditator's knowledge of the truth of suffering and the truth of the origin of suffering comes about by learning and hearing from the teacher, by questioning, by repeated recitation, and by mastering it through penetrative reflection. The first four processes of acquiring this knowledge constitute merely studying the scriptures. Grasping through penetrative reflection only amounts to insight meditation. The knowledge concerning the truth of the cessation of suffering and the truth of the path leading to the cessation is acquired only by hearing about them. After practicing insight meditation, at the moment of realization of the Noble Path, the first three truths are fully grasped by having accomplished the task of knowing rightly and well the truth of suffering, the task of abandoning the origin of suffering, and the task of developing the path leading to the cessation of suffering. The truth of the cessation of suffering is fully grasped by the actual realization. I think we can stop here with this paragraph.
There can be one more paragraph read aloud to finish it off.
Is it only one? Oh, okay. Thus, in accordance with the commentary, initially it is sufficient to know only from hearing that the truth of cessation and the truth of the path leading to cessation are desirable and laudable, and to incline the mind towards them. It is clear, therefore, that no effort is needed to contemplate particularly on these two truths. Knowledge about the first two truths should, however, be acquired both by learning and by developing insight through meditation. And the next time, how much learning is necessary will be answered.
Probably not as much as you think, as most people think. I mean, it's one of the things you learn quite early in Buddhism. Learning isn't the way. Hopefully you learn. Or some Buddhists don't learn it.
But thank you everyone for reading, everyone who participated in the reading. And if you want to have a discussion now or have questions, please go ahead. And also on YouTube, please feel free to write down your questions. We focus on those questions that are sincere, and we encourage you to try to relate them to your practice, or if you're unsure about the practice, then now is a good time to ask.
Delora, is that okay if I ask one question, please?
Yes, you're very welcome.
Thank you. So Bhante, sometimes sometimes the thought comes in, then I think not during the meditation. You see, the Buddha's teachings and the Vipassana, it's got to be for very, very handful of beings, because it's very, from looking at it from the samsara perspective, it feels like a 90-year-old man is trying to climb the Mount Everest. It's so hard, and it's just not like giving up. It's so. I also don't mean to look down at other religions or anything of that nature, but it must be very, very hard, and it only has to be only for a few handful of people or beings. Sometimes I got that idea from Bhante. Am I thinking the round view, having the round view in that perspective? Thank you, Bhante.
Mm-hmm. So a problem that sometimes occurs is we expect too much from people and get frustrated when they don't follow Buddhism. right? It is potentially frustrating when your family members are not interested in the Buddha's teaching, not following the Buddha's teaching, going contrary to the Buddha's teaching. Because it sounds cultish of me to say that, but let's stop using the word Buddhist teaching, say the truth. Right? There are certain things that are just harmful, and people engage in harmful things. And if you put it in that way, if you stop talking about Buddhism or the Buddhist teaching and you just say the truth, it makes things a little clearer, that there's a lot of people out there who are just inclined to harm themselves, who are mired in delusion. And by delusion just means mired in those things that are causing harm to themselves, harm to others. There's a lot of other people who are just wandering around aimlessly with no rhyme or reason. And so sometimes they fall into happiness, sometimes they fall into suffering. Don't have a real clear sense of what is causing happiness and what is causing suffering. But the point is that, yes, it is reasonable to say that most people are not that interested in the truth. But if you put it that way, it makes things a little bit more clearer. Because of course it's reasonable to think, oh, well, this religion, that religion, why should everyone be interested in the same religion? We're not really talking about religion. It's not what the Buddha talked about. It's not what Buddhism talks about. It's just the truth. It's fair to say that there are not a lot of people who are truly interested in truth. Really interested in the truths that matter. And it's simple. What are the truths that matter? Suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. But that being said, it's not a black and white situation. Right? Obviously, some people are more interested in the truth, interested in things that are worth being interested in. Some more, some less, some not at all, or seemingly not at all. But the way it works is a person at any level of interest, any level of understanding, can go either way. Right? Obviously, someone can get off track and make their life worse for themselves and engage in practices that bring them away from the truth, away from happiness, away from freedom. And someone can work in a way or change in a way that makes them realize some things about their life that they've been doing wrong, some things they could be doing better. Anyone at any part of the scale can do this, can become better, can become worse. And so there's really it's only applicable to a few people, which is obviously not what you're saying, but it's important to make that distinction. Yes, very few people are going to dedicate themselves to the practices that the Buddha taught. But anyone can better themselves if given the right support, the right instigation. And so all parts of Buddhism are valuable valuable for different situations. For example, simple things like teaching people to be better, teaching about ethics, talking about ethics, encouraging people not to drink alcohol, a very big one. Obviously encouraging people not to kill, not to steal, not to cheat, not to lie. Talking about these things and encouraging these things. Encouraging in charity, generosity, talking about generosity. Often it's not even so much encouraging as it is being an example. Right? There's a qualitative difference between you existing as a person who does good deeds, abstains from evil deeds, even if you never encourage other people in these things and cultivates meditation. There's a qualitative difference between you existing, doing all three of those things, and you not existing, or you existing not doing all of those things. Not just for you, but for all the people around you. It changes them. I mean, on the very basic level, you not killing changes the fact that, well, those beings that you would have killed are still alive. Right? There's no murder going on. Those beings that saw you do the murdering are also not given that example of someone who thinks it's okay to kill. For example, you not drinking alcohol. You don't have to be preachy about it or tell other people they shouldn't drink. You not drinking alcohol changes the world around you, changes other people. And quite often, I mean, there's so many examples of this in the texts. Quite often, it's just a seed you plant. That change has ripple effects. People who do just a little bit of meditation in their lives have often planted a seed that will change their trajectory of their life, in this life, of this life, and of future lives as well. I mean, there's no guarantee. Obviously, anyone you help in this life, even if you encourage them and they do take up meditation, there's no guarantee that they're going to become enlightened. They might just in the next life forget it all and fall back to their old ways. But it doesn't really disappear. And an interesting thing is that it often comes back in strange ways. Like you see examples where someone did something great in the time of a past Buddha, and as a result had the teachings resonate with them quite quickly in this life, or in the period of this Buddha Sasana. So don't discount the benefit of the Buddha's teaching or of good teachings in general that can be brought to anyone on any level. It's a good reminder for us never to abandon the teachings. If you meet a horrible, terrible person, you shouldn't get angry. You obviously shouldn't get angry. It's obviously not the Buddha's teaching. But you shouldn't throw your hands up and feel like it's a lost cause ever. That's the real point. Never, ever, ever feel like anything is a lost cause. It's a perspective that is lost so often. How often do you see Buddhists, how often did I see Buddhists in a Buddhist monastery get angry at someone who was clearly doing bad things? And basically just abandoned their training, but also abandoned any thought of helping this person. Some people would scoff at this. Helping this person. How could you help how could you help a psychopath? How could you help a person who is completely and utterly corrupt? Is what they would say. There's not really any such thing as someone who is completely and utterly corrupt. I mean, there's not really a thing as a person in the first place. But insofar as you talk about a person, the person is changeable, is affected by those around them. Impressionable. We are impressionable. I can't remember if that was all of your question or if there's something I missed, but I think that was the gist of it.
Thank you, Bhante. That's very encouraging. Thank you.
I really want to emphasize on your point, Bhante, that I agree we really often just dismiss people just because they seem crazy or we think they're a lost cause. But actually, it might be to some extent true. Maybe not in this life. But it's really not a good idea to just dismiss them, but to even send them kind thoughts and see if you can do anything for them if there is an opportunity. Not to go too much out of your way, but just have the how do you say, perspective that you would help them if you can. If they want your help, if they are open to your help, then that's what you are gonna offer. And if they don't want to, all right, I'm not gonna run behind them, run after them. So I think it really, even if nothing changes in that moment, in that, let's say, interaction or non-interaction, it has a strong impact, at least on yourself, but also potentially on the other person.
Yeah, I
So
think it is
thank you for-
important to it's important to remember that we're not looking for benefits, even for other people. So it's kind of misleading of me to I don't want to mislead into thinking that you should be trying to benefit people. But the point is that realizing that nobody is a lost cause, and realizing that it's not cut and dried, it's not black and white, helps you remember that there's never any reason to act differently in any situation, whether you're talking to someone who is keen on Buddhism, even well-versed in the Buddha's teaching, well-versed in the practice, advanced in the practice, whether you're talking to an enlightened being or talking to an unenlightened being, a corrupt individual. There's never any reason to be different than just being mindful, or more generally, just do the right thing, say the right thing. Not even, just be right. You don't have to think about helping someone. But as you say, you're open to helping them. And the point there is that that's just par for the course. It's just a matter of course, not par for the, it's just a matter of course. You're good, you're kind, you're helpful as a matter of course. I don't know if this is familiar. That if you're not a native English speaker, that might not be a familiar phrase, but a matter of course means it's just what you do. It's just natural. Because through mindfulness, you see clearly if a person, I mean, you see clearly, because what happened, the only reason why you would shut someone down is out of your own aversion to their evil, to their corruption. Through your conceit, perhaps, through your arrogance, through your impatience. Often we're impatient with people who are corrupt. Corruptest people are most impatient with the corrupt.
And another thing, sorry to hold up the Q&A, what you mentioned, or which could have been also part of the answer, and I think I learned that from you, Bante, that we tend to underestimate the strength of the Buddha's teaching, that even if the task is huge, because it is huge, the tool is still a very powerful one. So one should put that also into perspective and know that you have something very powerful, even if it's very difficult.
Yeah, it's also worth saying, just to elaborate on that even, that it's often not as insurmountable a challenge as you'd think. It does happen that a Buddhist or a meditator will think that it's something far, far too difficult for me, far too unreasonable for the ordinary person to climb that mountain. Like, as you say, a 90-year-old man, as was said. I once had a man in Thailand, a Thai man, long time ago, I remember what we were talking about. Oh, he asked me, why did you become a Buddhist monk? And I said, I think this was his question. I said to become, to see Nibbana. Or I think that was, it's so long ago, but I think that was his question. And he looked shocked. He was shocked, and he said, ordinary people can't reach Nibbana. I think if I remember correctly, what he said is, oh, you foreigners, you have such, he was kind of amazed and kind of impressed in a sort of backhanded sort of way. He said, you're always focused you're focused on the moon. He said, humans can't reach Nibbana. That's like trying to reach the moon. And I said, well, human beings did make it to the moon, you know. And he said, oh, no, that was all fake. Anyway, it was an interesting conversation. But it is a common thing, especially in Buddhist cultures. Because in Buddhist cultures, we're talking about a lot of people who are only superficially Buddhist. It's not to discount the depth of Buddhism in Buddhist cultures. There is a great depth in Thailand, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, even Cambodia and Laos to some extent, even though they've been greatly devastated by war and suffering and tragedy. But there still is a depth. But the general culture, it's just you're talking about a lot more people exposed to Buddhism. And being exposed, even at an early age, makes them superficially Buddhist. So there's a lot of Buddhists. But a lot of those people see it as the moon. It's just this faraway thing. And they get the wrong idea that it's not right there in front of them able to be practiced. Just because we're talking scale numbers. So many people, most of them obviously are just hearing about it secondhand or learning about it superficially it's like a game of telephone. And so that's important to dispel, the idea that it's not accessible. Buddha's teaching is accessible. And anyone who is interested is already at the most important, they've already crossed the most important threshold. The people for whom it's insurmountable and who are not going to benefit in this life are the people who are not interested. If you're not interested, it's unlikely that you're going to succeed in this lifetime. Now, that can change, of course. People can suddenly become interested, but without that change, without actually becoming interested, that's the last qualification. The first one is you're born a human being. The second is you're born in the time of the Buddhasasana, so Buddhism is here. The third, and this doesn't go for everyone, but the third is you're physically and situationally capable. So you have the physical capacity to practice, and you have the situation. In other words, you're not in indentured servitude or in a situation where you're obligated to do things that take you away from the practice. Those are the first three. The fourth is you have the interest and the intention, the inclination to better yourself, to seek out the truth, and to find the Four Noble Truths. If you've got that already, you're already one of those few people who could very much benefit from actual practice.
Thank you, Benny. That's the last part was the one that my question was trying to get at, and all the earlier answers were also very, very good. So thank you so much to Benny and Delora. Thank you.
I have to plug in two important benefits to the list that Bhante added, which is that, especially for this community, we have an amazing meditation center that we've built, and we have arguably the best teacher out there. Those two, in addition to the list that Bante mentioned, I believe is the very, very important and beneficial in progressing in the meditation practice. So, just an advertisement for the meditation center and for the community to come and do meditation courses. It's all free, so there's no cost to this.
Yeah, we're trying to make it accessible, doing our best. Obviously, I think the at-home course has been wildly successful. It's still a drop in the bucket or drop in the ocean, but it's great that we have this system set up, and much appreciation to the volunteers who have set it up the way it is now, where we're able to have these online or at-home courses. So if you haven't done that, it's there, and we're here. I'm one of the people teaching it, but there's a couple of other. Edit is, Adder is. I think Mila probably will at some point. Whenever she's, I don't know, maybe she already is actually. But yeah, we're trying to make it as accessible as we can. The problem with our center, of course, is it's incredibly inaccessible. We're up on top of a mountain, kind of a great feat that I'm actually able to connect through the internet. And it's a feat of modern technology. But apart from that, we are very remote and difficult to get to, and it's discouraging for some people to think about coming to Sri Lanka. It's far away, or Sri Lanka might seem like a dangerous place. It's certainly not. There's still some misunderstanding going around about the idea that there's civil war or something like that. There's absolutely no danger. There hasn't been for many years any kind of potential for any kind of any kind of disturbance or anything like that. And people are great. The culture is great. And our center is quiet, peaceful, great environment for practice. There's very few mosquitoes. There are some mosquitoes. You can't really go anywhere on the earth where that mosquitoes. Very few places, but very few. It's very peaceful to practice meditation here. You can do so for the cultivation of mindfulness and insight. Anyway, let's answer people's questions. Certainly prioritize the group. So if anyone in the group, you people are the priority. Those of you who have done the at-home course and are here to engage by actually reading the text out loud with us, you're the priority. If anyone has any questions or comments or discussion, don't hesitate. People on YouTube, their task is to do the at-home course so they can come up on stage like all of us. In the meantime, we'll ask if we have time. We'll answer their questions as we have time.
Bante, here is the first question that we have from the YouTube chat. If we're experiencing pleasure, whether with food or in a romantic sense, is the thing we need to catch the most the liking and enjoying? Is that the cause of the unavoidable grief cycle?
Yes, that's pretty simple. But with the qualifier that you're not trying to, as I said, you're not trying to get rid of it. It does get rid of it, but that's not your point. If your point is to get rid of it, you're going to miss the most important thing. The most important thing is not attacking or tackling the liking. It's important because without noting the liking, you can't see anything else clearly. The liking is going on, and it's preventing you from seeing things objectively. Obviously, if you're liking, you're not objective. That's why it's most important. But it's only the first important thing. It's not the only important thing. The goal is not simply to dispel the liking. The goal is to see clearly. And what that means is to see clearly that those things that you like are not worth liking. This is the distinction. The actual trigger or the actual instigator for freedom from suffering, for letting go and becoming free, is seeing not that liking is bad or craving is bad, but to see that the things that you like are not worth liking. In fact, nothing is worth liking. That liking is just not worth it. That they're not liking is not worth it. That these things, or that things are not things in general. That which arises, anything that arises, is not worth clinging to. I mean, it actually intellectually sounds so simple. Things that arise last for a moment and then they cease. So obviously, clinging to them, holding on to them is not viable. Intellectually, Buddhism is something very easy to grasp from beginning to end. Maybe you don't agree with it, maybe you're not sure about it, but to understand it intellectually is not hard. The difficulty is in teaching yourself this truth. And that's all the practice is, really. It's quite simple. Pay enough attention, you will see, yes. Clearly, all that there is in this thing that I like is experiences that arise and cease. Those experiences are not worth clinging to. Why would they be? They arise and they cease. This doesn't happen intellectually, but this is a description of how you start to see. You start to notice how wrong it is to cling to things. But it's because you see these things are not worth clinging to. They just arise and cease. This food that I like is actually not food at all. It's seeing, tasting, smelling, liking, thinking. But all of those things that are actually the reality of it, all of them are not worth clinging to. Momentary, impermanent suffering and non-self, or impermanent unsatisfying and non-self, unable to bring happiness.
Bhante, here's the next question that we have. Is it correct that in walking meditation, you should intentionally steer your mind mostly towards just the walking motion, but in sitting meditation, you can more freely note other sense objects too?
It's not quite accurate to say it like that. You should rather say it like this, that in walking, it's unreasonable to try and note every little thing. Because there's motion going on and it's distracting to move and to note. So as a rule, you limit the noting of other things to those things that are significant. And it's not, you don't need a hard and fast rule for what is significant, but the general rule of thumb is anything that is a hindrance or has the potential for giving rise to hindrances. So something you might like, something you might dislike, or the liking or disliking itself when it does arise. Pain, pleasure, calm, anything extraordinary like a very loud noise or something. But because it's distracting and unsuitable to note while you're still walking. Stop walking, put your feet together, and do standing meditation, noting the thing that's distracting you until it goes away, and then you start walking again. So if a stray thought or a stray distraction arises, don't note it, just go back to the foot and keep walking. And it's not that you should incline away from noting, it's that if it's not significant, it's not really worth noting during walking meditation. Only when it's significant should you then stop. And again, it's not like you could, oh, I shouldn't have stopped, I did a bad thing there, or oh, I should have stopped, I did a bad thing there. Just go with it. If it feels significant, stop, fine. Walking, standing meditation is perfectly valid. Doesn't mean you should be always trying to experiment, but don't be too concerned with doing it the wrong way. Certainly don't just ignore everything and focus on the feet, but just a general rule of thumb, only for that which you consider to be reasonably significant. In sitting, it's simpler. You just note whatever you notice, and then go back to the stomach again.
Bhante, here's the next question that we have. After 45 minutes of meditation, I get restless and tense. I note tense. Should I stick with it or change to walking meditation? Should I train the mind gradually to practice for 1 hour?
You get, just a second, you get restless and tense. Absolutely, you should face them and note them. I would ask you whether there's something else there. Is there disliking of it? Is there worry? Is there wanting to do something else? Sometimes you have to be a little clear about why there's restlessness. Restlessness is fine to note by itself, but if it was just restlessness, if it was just tension, well, tension is just very physical. Restless is pretty simple. You just note restless, and just be patient with it. Eventually it will go away. But usually they're accompanied by disliking of what you're doing, disliking of the tension, worry about, fear about, or they can be accompanied with the craving. You're thinking about something, maybe there's food to be eaten, maybe there's entertainment to be had, Facebook to be scrolled. There's something to be done that you crave and want for. So you should be careful to note those as well. After 45 minutes of meditation, now I wouldn't recommend doing an hour of sitting if that's what you're talking about. Sounds like you're talking about just sitting. You should try and do half walking followed by half sitting. And you'll find that's generally a lot more reasonable. Unless you're doing intensive practice, I wouldn't really recommend trying to do 1 hour walking, 1 hour sitting. I certainly wouldn't recommend just doing 1 hour of sitting ever. You should always do half walking, half sitting if possible. And try to do more than once a day if you can, but you have to balance how long your sessions are with how many sessions you're doing. So if you're doing a lot of sessions, they can be longer. If you're not doing so many sessions, I would recommend keeping them shorter, not short, but not trying to do one very long session. It's too much of a shock to the system because you're not really being mindful. You practice twice a day, 30-30 each, 30-30 twice a day, so 2 hours a day, that's great. If you practice 3 times a day, you can start to think about upping the time, 40 minutes, 40-40, or even up to 1 hour, 1 hour. But unless you're doing intensive practice, again, I wouldn't really recommend 1 hour walking, 1 hour sitting. If you can, great, but better to do a few slightly shorter sessions.
Bante, is it because of the benefit of the, I mean, I think the answer is clear to me, but still, the benefit of the distribution of the practice, because if you do it short, but often, then you are more inclined to also be mindful outside of the practice. Is what I at least understand.
Certainly, so practicing twice a day is generally more beneficial than once a day, even if it's shorter times. But the other thing, as I said, is it's just too much of a shock. You can say, I'm going to sit for an hour. It's not likely to be as beneficial as doing twice a day, 30-30. Just because an hour, you're not ready for it, is the point. Your mind isn't ready for it. If someone does an hour a day all at once, I can't imagine that being the best use of their time. It's great. Obviously, any meditation is good, but the quality is not going to be as good if you try to do one big, long session a day, because the quality is not as great. Along with what you said, as it being more beneficial for your daily life, for keeping the meditation in mind throughout the day. Mindfulness isn't just the time you spend sitting cross-legged with your eyes closed. We can all be mindful right now. We should all be mindful of what's happening right now as we're sitting here in this session.
Bante, here's the next question. How does one build a meaningful conversation with a fellow practitioner?
Well, I'm not sure that should really be a goal. I don't know how beneficial it is to think, how can I build a meaningful conversation? Doesn't sound like something that is the best thing to dwell upon. But I mean, it doesn't seem like a great question. That's just what I'm saying. I think your focus is probably a little bit off if that's the question that you're asking. Sorry, that probably sounds pretty awful. But it stands that conversation isn't really where it's at. Conversation should occur when there's a need to converse. There are cases of monks who wouldn't talk. They wouldn't open their mouth to talk, even living together in close quarters. If they had something to do, they would beckon with their hand, but they made it a practice to never talk, to not never talk. There were two groups, actually. There's one that did this and just never talked, and the Buddha said, you're like animals. Animals can live like that. But these monks, every 5 days, I think it was, they would get together and they would talk Dhamma all night, reciting it or discussing it, or I don't know. So it's not why I was kind of not giving a direct answer, like saying it's wrong to want to converse, because it's not wrong to want to converse. It's not wrong to converse. But it should happen because it's necessary, or because it's important. And so for these monks, they decided that every 5 days they would get together and they would talk Dhamma. And so how do you have a meaningful conversation? And maybe that's what you're asking is, if I have to talk to people, how do I make sure it's good talk? The Buddha said either you talk the Dhamma, speak the Dhamma, or you keep silent. That's how you should think. I will either speak on the Dhamma, or I will not talk. I will maintain silence. And so that's a really simple answer, is to say, how do you just make sure you talk Dhamma. And if there's no Dhamma to talk, you just keep quiet. A very common form of conversation is question. You ask questions. You have a question, you ask it of your teacher, but even among other practitioners, ask questions about the Dhamma. Another one is discussing a discourse. So as we do, we read a discourse and then we discuss it, hopefully. But apart from that, I mean, again, my point was, I don't know why you'd go out of your way to try and have a conversation as though that was some sort of valuable practice. It's really not. The best thing, if there's nothing to say, don't say anything at all. And if you have something to say, well, you say it. If it's about the Dhamma, you say it. If you have something to say that's not related to the Dhamma, well, I mean, unless you're a monk, you'll probably end up talking a lot of things that aren't related to the Dhamma, but you should consider that ultimately it's not really worth it if it's not related to the Dhamma. Ultimately. I mean, it's not fair because practically everyone has to, even monks have to talk things that aren't Dhamma from time to time. Certainly if you're not living in a monastic setting, you're going to have to spend a lot of time talking about things that aren't Dhamma, or else people will get very upset at you. You can't just sit silently.
Here's the next question, Bante. What is the best way to end an addiction?
But you have to see that the thing that you are addicted to is not worth being addicted to. And that takes time and dedication. You have to be dedicated. You have to apply yourself to the cultivation of mindfulness, absolutely. And you need time, so you have to be patient with it. But I don't know if you've read our booklet. The booklet sort of tries to sum up our technique that is for the purpose of freeing one from addiction. And if you apply it, you'll see that it does work. It's just a matter of being dedicated to applying it and giving it the time that it needs, doing that over time, to the extent that it frees you from the addiction. The more dedicated you are, the less time it takes. The less dedicated you are, the more time it takes.
Bhante, here's the next question. I recently experienced a bout of fibromyalgia, which is a syndrome where the nerve pathways amplify pain. It also causes temperature dysregulation, where a chill triggers uncontrollable shivering, while at the same time drenching the body with sweat. I welcomed it at the beginning as an object of meditation, noting pain, cold, but by day 3, there was no relief and I was exhausted. I feel like I failed in that the pain did not cease through diligent noting. What could I have done differently?
Well, the first thing you should do differently is correct the misunderstanding. The noting is not to make the pain go away. And in fact, making the pain go away should never be the goal. You don't fail because the pain doesn't go away. You fail because you don't realize that the pain is not under your control. But that failure is actually a step in the right direction. Well, maybe not, but failing in terms of the way you say failing to make the pain go away is a step in the right direction. Because seeing that you can't make the pain go away changes your perspective. It can be discouraging at first because that's what you expected out of the meditation, and when your expectations are not met, you think, well, this meditation's useless, or I'm useless, I'm not doing it correctly. But the real lesson is not that your expectations weren't met and therefore something's wrong with the way you did it or what you did. The real lesson is that expectations are the cause of suffering. The pain isn't the cause of suffering. The problem is that you expected something different than what happened. And that's always going to be a problem. That's a problem inherent in expectation. That's why the Buddha taught the present moment. Stay in the present moment. If you focus on the present moment, you never have to deal with more than one thing, and one very, very small thing. If you don't live in the past, don't live in the future, all you have to deal with is ever going to be one thing, one moment. And then that moment's gone, and you don't have to deal with it anymore. The problem is when you think, oh, it lasted for 3 days, then you're not living in the present, you're living in the past. Those 3 days are gone. They're not with you. If you're exhausted, well, that's just a moment of exhaustion. The pain not going away, well, that will exhaust you if you want it to go away. Expectations will exhaust you. So, I mean, it's great. It all sounded great that you were noting, you're doing a great thing. Just be clear that it's a misunderstanding to think that the whole point is to make the pain go away. It's absolutely not. Pain was never the problem in the first place. The problem is you don't like the pain. You want it to go away. And you should also be noting the disliking. You didn't mention that, right? Pain, cold. Did you also note the disliking, the wanting it to go away? Those things are more important to be noted first until they're gone. Then you can note the pain, then you can note the cold objectively, not trying to make it go away. Letting go doesn't mean getting rid of. Letting go means it's still there, but I'm not attached to it. The word the Buddha used is anisita. Anisita means independent. Independence is a very, very core teaching of the Buddha, a very core principle of Buddhism, independence. If you use that word to describe what we're aiming for, it brings clarity. Independence means not dependent on this pain going away, not vulnerable, not susceptible, not under the power of this pain or of the disliking of the pain or of the wanting it to go away. Anisito joviharati, and one dwells independent. Natcha kinchi loke upadiyati, not clinging to anything in the world. Am I still live?
Yes, we're here, Bante.
Yes.
Just preparing the next
Okay.
question. Here's the next
I have to
question,
check
Bante.
because it's unpredictable.
It's okay, Bante. Here's the next question. I have been using the noting practice to prevent unarisen states from arising. For example, seeing blocks images provocative of lust out, so they don't arise to begin with or stop arising. Is this a bad idea?
That's a very bad idea. That's not mindfulness. That's control. You're trying to control. Recognize that for what it is. It's delusion, thinking that you can control. It's very, very much the whole point of what we're trying to change about our perspective. It's the control, the need to control, the effort to control that's gotten us in this problem in the first place. And all you're going to find is after all the time and effort you put into that, you're no better off than when you started. They all just come back anyway. This is the key and the brilliance of the Four Noble Truths, as I said. And we haven't gotten to it. I'm sorry we're taking so long. I mean, not really, but I apologize. I acknowledge that we're not going very quickly, but we're almost there at the point where the real important part of the sutta, well, all important, but the crux of the sutta comes about what you have to do in regards to the Four Noble Truths. And none of them are stop this from coming up, right? The first task is to see suffering or to understand suffering completely. Fully understand. I've mentioned this already. Understand suffering fully. So that means all those things that you don't see as suffering. What's not readily understandable about this statement, to see suffering clearly, is that we're not talking about the painful stuff. We're talking about those things that you think are worth clinging to, either clinging out of anger, so you dislike them, or clinging out of greed or delusion. Clinging to those things is not worth it. That's the whole of our task, really. And the reason why you like those things is not because you're not stopping the liking from arising. That's not the thing. It's not that you're neglecting to stop it. It's that the lust is arising, right? Lust, you said, a desire of any kind is arising because you see those things as being worthy of lusting after, worthy of liking. If you paid attention to them, faced them, saw them clearly, you would see those things are dukkha. Those things are dukkha. You don't see it. When you see it, you will no longer attach to them. But seeing them as dukkha doesn't mean, oh, this is painful. It means, oh, this is not satisfying. This is not actually happiness. Not actually worth clinging to. It's quite remarkable as you pay attention how that desire just evaporates. When we say mindfulness prevents the arising of lust, no, you're actually saying something different. When you say that it prevents the arising of seeing, it absolutely doesn't. It's like, I don't want to think, so I'm just going to say thinking, that would somehow prevent thoughts from arising. It absolutely doesn't. But what it does do is it prevents the arising of liking. When you note seeing, liking has no opportunity. But it's not because you're blocking it out or something. It's because you're seeing that object clearly. There is no reason to cling or crave for anything. That's the truth. So all you have to do is see clearly, and you will absolutely not cling to anything. It's quite simple. You don't have to convince yourself of it, or believe it, or follow the Buddha, or as a Buddhist, believe something. You just have to see it clearly as it is. As a result, you won't cling to it simply because nothing is worth clinging to. Just the facts. It's just the truth.
Bante, we've passed the second hour, so that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you deeply for your time today, Bante.
Thank you for all the questions. Thank you everyone who asked the good questions, coming from a place of sincerity and Dhamma chanda. The Buddha said, Dhamma kamo bhavang hoti. One who loves the Dhamma is a cultivated individual. So people who are keen to get answers to their question, you're not here answering questions about worldly things, right? I appreciate everyone who actually asks questions. That's always a great thing to see, because it implies that it signifies that there are people, that these are people who are keen on the Dhamma. The fact that we're able to do this group at all shows that is a sign that we are all keen on the Dhamma. People actually coming and reading these texts of a monk who has passed away. We're reading a dead man's work. The fact that we're doing that, and we're also learning what this book is based on, the teachings of the Buddha who passed away 2,500 years ago. This is a sign that we are keen on this. This isn't something contemporary. This isn't the news that we're watching or discussing. This is the past, ancient texts. And the fact that we are here is a sign that this is interesting things, and that we are interested, and that all of us have these 4 qualities or opportunities. We have been born in the time of the Buddha. We've been born as human beings. We have the physical capacity to come and learn. And we have the mental interest, capacity to appreciate these teachings. So much appreciation for everyone who came out, everyone on YouTube, everyone here on Discord, especially those of you on stage who have taken the time to do the at-home course and have taken the time out of your week every week to help read the texts. And of course, especially those of you who are volunteering to organize the questions, a special thanks and appreciation for the deep self-sacrifice that it takes to dedicate yourself to learning how to do this broadcast. And it's not Dhamma, knowledge, so you're having to go out of your way to learn something technical. Much appreciation for those of you who have done that and who are taking the time and taking the making the effort to make this happen. Much appreciation for the Sri Mangala Board of Directors and volunteers, all of the IT people who make this platform possible for us to use. Much appreciation to everyone. We come here today to better ourselves. We come here today to help others. We come here today to keep Buddhism alive, and to keep Buddhism as a presence in the world, because what that means is that we want to keep truth alive in the world. Not just any truth, but the truth that's important. We want to be able to answer this question for ourselves and for others. What is suffering? What is the cause of suffering? What is the cessation of suffering? What is the path that leads to the cessation of suffering? We keep Buddhism alive, and we'll keep the answers to these questions alive, and the means of gaining these answers, which are the only important questions to find answers to in the world. So much appreciation for all the work that you've all done and all the work that we do. With the benefit of all of this goodness that has been performed on this occasion, in these 2 hours, that we were patient and mindful and dedicated to Buddhism, along with all the benefit of all the good things that you've done in this life and past lives, all of the good things that I have done, the power of that, power of the goodness of teaching and sharing the Dhamma, I dedicate all of this to you as well. May this benefit, and may the merit and the goodness be of benefit to all of you as well, and may you share in the goodness. May we share in the goodness of the Buddha, the goodness of the Dhamma, the goodness of the Sangha. May their greatness protect us and keep us free from suffering, free from danger, free from enmity, free from sickness, free from all the dangers that samsara has in store. May you all live long, healthy, happy lives with the strength to face whatever challenges come your way. May you be dedicated to the cultivation of goodness and the cultivation of mindfulness, cultivation of wisdom, the cultivation of truth. May your minds be fixed and focused on this task, fixed and dedicated to the Buddha's teaching and dedicated to the truth, dedicated to righteousness and goodness in this life and in the future, that you might find happiness in this life, happiness in the next life, happiness in all lives to come, until you finally find the true happiness of Nibbana, the ultimate happiness of peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering, of the path and fruition in Nibbana. Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu,
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 sadhu.
sadhu.